Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I'm super excited this week because I had these painful questions. And they're questions that, although on the surface, they're like, oh my gosh, but yet when we dig in with today's guest, we're going to learn a ton. So I'm going to start out with this question. Have you ever wanted to better yourself or overcome a problem but didn't know where to start? Now, if you haven't, then call me because I definitely want you on my show as my guest because you've arrived and we're all where you're where we want to be. So definitely let me know on that one. And the second one is even more challenging. Have you ever taken steps to move forward only to realize you are right back where you started? So between those two questions, I'll let those sink in and we're going to circle back to those in a minute. But I tell you what, those really rang true for me. And I want to unpack some stuff today. I'm honored to be hanging out with Dr. Ian Brooks. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Dave. Doing well. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, you are the founder of Rhodes Smith Consulting, which is a personal and professional development firm and fellow author, congratulations, of the book Intention, Building Capacities to Transform Your Story. There it is.
That's
awesome.
it. Yeah.
Super. So I want to learn about intention because I got to tell you right up front, Ian, that when I was a kid, the only thing that I remember about intention was knocking on the door to a girl's house and the father saying, Dave, what's your intention with my daughter? So there was like a creepy thing right from the start, right?
Right.
So I just want to make
memories, I'm sure.
not talking about the same thing here, okay? So, but I just, so tell me, start off by telling me about Rhodes Smith Consulting. What's going on over there?
Yeah, here at Rhodes Smith, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder. And as you mentioned, I'm really focused on helping people master their intent. So I work with frontline leaders, brand new leaders, top talent, mid-level leaders, as well as people in their day-to-day, just trying to be better. Here at Rhodes Smith, I do that through a concept based off of my book, Intention, in where it's really building our capabilities. So it takes it out of this context of, hey, let's get a milestone of a job title, more money, more sales, or new car, new house, and puts it in a framework of who am I as a person and what behaviors can I consistently execute against. As a result of that, and through Rhodes Smith and working with groups as well as with individuals, I put together a framework that guides people through in a seamless fashion, but one that is easy to understand, but goes in depth into who they are and what they should be doing, and then begins to take steps towards achieving their new tomorrow.
Holy cow. So framework, and so as soon as you use that word, and you're a PhD, so as soon as you use that word, I'm like, uh-oh, here we go, right? I got to get the dictionary out. I like that you said it was easy. So, so we're going to unpack some of those things. Mm-hmm. So I want to just ask you, when somebody says, you know what, I want to better myself, Ian, but I don't know how. So where do you, I don't know if that's the start is, like in most 12 steps, admitting that you have, a problem. I've never been there, but I've heard, right? Okay. But where do you start with that? If somebody's listening and they're just, there's something in their life that they're just, wishing they could do a better job at, whatever the wording is, but where do you start?
Yeah, the very first step that I take my clients through and even put it in the book as well, and that is discovery. And that discovery is really based off of several things. It's based on the principle that what we see in our lives and that surround us, we see it as almost like it's a boulder, right? Like this huge thing to move. And in and of itself, it's probably nothing more than a grain of sand on a beach, right? In the context of who we are and what we want to achieve. And so what I ask my clients to do, and heck, I even do it myself, and when I get in those moments, is kind of take a step back and say, what really is the consternation? What really is the stress? What really do I think I need to change? And what's the reason? And let's unpack the reasons. And how do those reasons align to who I am? How do those reasons align to what I want? How do they align to my values? Even my own expectations. It takes it out of, hey, let me just go and jump and solve to do something, a la, let me put a plan together and just do, right? And quite frankly, I'm confident anyone can do that, and people do it very successfully. But that doesn't transform us, right? If we have a pain point, we need to discover really what those pain point is and are in order for us to integrate the solutions into our lives, integrate the behaviors that are consistent so we don't have to go back through this again. Because as you mentioned, we kind of come back to the same thing, thinking we have solved something where we've done it one time and we think we're done. We think we've been in a situation and yes, we've been successful at it. I'm good at it and I'm an expert now. That answer oftentimes is no. It's what are the other situations that I'm applying this to, but also have I built the right capabilities, infrastructure, and foundation? Have I built the right behaviors and capabilities to move forward? So we start off with discovery of really what are you solving for and anchoring on a true purpose and true direction before doing anything else.
So when you start there, I mean, the first word that came into my mind is kind of the next book I'm working on is about blind spots.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm sitting here listening right now and I can't come up with I'm trying to pick something. I mean, I don't know, even I'm trying to pick something, let's say I don't even know, right? Let's say I smoke. Okay. Let's say I smoke and I want to quit smoking, or I work too hard. I'm addicted to work, whatever it is, whatever is the listener is listening to, whatever comes up, they can pinpoint an issue, but I don't know how much thought is gone around it. And how deep do we have to get? Because again, entrepreneurs listening, we got a business to run. We have all these things going on. The last thing I need to do is slow myself down, take inventory, sing Kumbaya around the fire, So, I mean, how do what happens once I've seen this, but do I need to dig deeper? I mean, if I want to quit something, a habit, let's just say, what goes on next?
Yes, I actually say dig deeper, and I actually talk to my entrepreneur clients about that, because I'm not asking people to sing Kumbaya, but I can almost guarantee you that to say, hey, I've already gone down this path, I already know what I'm going to solve. I can guarantee you that's the first sign for me of failure.
Okay.
The first sign that if you're not willing to slow down, because we're caught in a rat race, right? I'm a business owner like yourself and like your listeners. And you want to go out there and get money. It's all about our ROI. That's all that's wonderful. But if you're actually trying to break a habit that you've built up through the entirety of your life, the habit of smoking, which is an addiction, which is what are those instances when you smoke? What are those instances when you find that you're going out and buying? Is it stress? Is it because you're not eating? Is it because it's just your time to take a break, give you an excuse to take that 15-minute smoke? What is that? And that's aside from its own addictive behavior and the tar that comes in. So as an example, I was working with a woman, a very successful woman, and as most of my clients already are, but they're looking to expand. In her particular case, she felt overwhelmed. She was just now coming off retirement of a one full-time job as being a project manager and creating all this strategy for a large university. She also had a side business where she was actually a therapist and was doing counseling out of her home, 2 days out of the week. She was also starting a new startup, running an internet company with her husband and family members and other people in different cities to create access.
Yeah.
And by the way, she wanted to be retired and do yoga and meet her friends. And I say congratulations. I'm like, okay, that all sounds good.
What did she do in the afternoon, Ian? My gosh.
All right. It's like, okay, I see what you're going to be doing at 12 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But her definition was that she was overwhelmed. Now, for her, even as a therapist, and doing all that success that she had and retiring from a job of 25 years and having 2 other businesses, she didn't know how to step out and step away. She did not know how to let go. And we had to explore the reason she wasn't willing to let go. And so did that stop her from running her businesses? No, right? She still, was still retiring, which she did. She was still a therapist, which she was, and doing that 3-4 days out of the week. She was still running that other internet business with her significant other and their family across different states, still doing that. But it was like, how do you manage the feeling of being overwhelmed in the context of the environment that you've now created? So in that respect, with her, it was important, one, that we acknowledge the truth that, okay, you're overwhelmed because you're not willing to let go. Sure. I just listed all the things you did. Heck, in and of itself, you can tell that she's overwhelmed, but now you think you need to be in everything and do everything and can't let go. That's the true challenge. So let's use your situation. Let's use your current environment. Let's use what's around you and say, okay, what's in our environment that you now need to be in? And let's make a conscious, intentional, purposeful choice on where you're going to spend your time. Because now you're making a choice. And a lot of times we think we just don't want to be overwhelmed and that, and we're going to continue doing whatever the heck we did before. In her case, it's being overwhelmed and still being in control over every decision. We have to be able to let go of certain things. And in her case, being able to let go and trust people in that respect. Likewise, going back to someone who wants to quit smoking and creating new habits, we have to be able to let go. That does not mean we're doing this in a silo and that we can't run our own businesses and the growth and the ROI and does, right? Because we got businesses to run and things to do.
Yeah.
But in that respect, when we're actually discovering, we can't be afraid to slow down, because as the saying goes, he who does not build his foundations beforehand may by great ability go back and do so afterwards, but with great trouble to the architect and danger to the building. Sure. So just because you think you can get through it right now, be sure and be damn, you will have to go back at some point. And trying to build a new house on a 2020 house on 1940 pipes, it might work for a little bit, but it will not work for long. Wow. So be conscious of it.
Well, and so I write these words down because in case you didn't hear it, Ian, there were a ton of breaks that were going on in the car because guys were slowing down because they're like, oh, wait a minute here. You're asking me to explore. You're asking me to slow down. You're asking me to let go. I mean, I am in business to control my future, to go as fast as I can, right? So these are the common walls that people build when you are probably trying to communicate with them. So if you're listening and that's you, that's totally cool. I mean, this is Ian's used to this. You know, but the reality of it is you have to look at this conversely. It's really hard to stop something and just keep going. I mean, it's hard. And it's hard to go to the doctor and say, I'm hurt. And the doctor says, what's wrong? And you go, well, you tell me. I'm not telling you. I don't have time to tell you. Fix me while I'm going. So I think that's what's hard here. And as we kind of look at the discovery piece is every word you said was like, I got to take my foot off the gas. And that's life, right? It
really is. And I also want to acknowledge that we're separating personal choice and our personal behavior and what we're doing individually versus, say, running our business and the time it takes to generate money and to be visible in that respect. There's quite a bit of overlap in that, but let's also be conscious and aware and intentional about it, that when we're running our business, we're having a new mindset and we're creating a space to actually drive that forward. But as we are individuals, through and through, and our greatest ability, as I like to put in my book, and our greatest ability is to evolve. And that's through learning. And the only way that I know how to learn for myself, and when I talk about in the book as well, and even how I coach my clients, and that is managing your pace. And that's just my acronym of one, your P is for patience. Be patient on this journey. You didn't get here overnight. And while we might be able to go out there and hit the lottery, you're going to see more results, be it in your own behaviors and your habits, as well as in your business. When you take an intentional and consistent approach around how you're actually navigating. It's just not one splash in the pan. It's, I made those 10 sales, or yes, I made 100K. Now what? Right? It's about more than that. Sure. The second piece there around that pace is around your accountability. Like, how am I holding myself accountable? Because this is now where my passion comes in. Both in investing in my own self to be a better entrepreneur, be a better father, be a better friend, be a better partner, but also be a better leader in my organization. So let's hold ourselves accountable on what it is that I'm actually doing. The C is for commitment. Stay committed to it, because there's so many times we're going to jump off that ship, right? As we all, I think I can all attest to in our entrepreneurship, there are many peaks and a lot more valleys. We have to stay committed in those valleys, and we're going to be tested at every step. And so because of that, our foundation is what's going to carry us through. Our context of who we are, our values, and understanding our true mission and what we're trying to achieve is going to be important. In that E, we have to manage our emotions. The world is going to tell us to move fast because we're going to look on the internet, we're going to look on our SEOs, we're going to look around us at our friends and our family, and they're going to tell us that we're not doing enough. They're going to tell us and show us, whether they verbally say it or not, that I'm falling short. And that source of comparison creates that anxiety. Or it could be bills, or it could be people dependent upon you. So it's like, wow, I got to do this, got to do that, got to do this, got to do that. I often find that people in those moments, obviously, creates anxiety. Hell, I've been there. And probably be back there at some point.
Sure.
But that creates that anxiety and that emotions. We have to check some of that and say, okay, yes, congratulations, Ian. That's anxious. Congratulations on that emotion and that feeling. And that's true. But now let's put it in the context of, let's put a plan together. What really is that issue from that discovery? Now, what am I willing to do? What's my true now voice? Now, aside from taking any action, now I'm coming from a position of power, a position of conscious awareness. That doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean it's linear, doesn't mean I know everything, doesn't mean I still don't have my blind spots. What it does mean is I'm taking a conscious and intentional effort to move forward in a way that I'm not being controlled by my emotions. I'm being patient because now I can take deliberate steps and I'm holding myself accountable and committing to what I'm doing.
Oh my gosh. I wrote down, so manage your pace.
Yes.
Patience, accountability, commitment, and emotions. And I tell you what, if we didn't lose the rest of the group now, it's one of those things. Now you want me to be accountable to somebody. That's why I'm in business for myself, Ian. Okay. I don't want to be accountable to anybody. I mean, there's words that we're talking about that like are rub people, entrepreneurs the wrong way.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that this is what you signed up for. Absolutely. As a business owner. This is what you signed up for if you have a team of people that you're responsible for. So these words, as much as you don't want to hear them, I think they're like our daily, they just are every single day. And I wrote down, which I really enjoy, is comparison equals anxiety. I mean, how cool is that? If you are anxious and you're listening today, it's entirely possible that you're comparing yourself, you're comparing your business, and it's so hard not to compare. I mean, at a networking event, you want to have the best introduction, you want to have the best whatever. In front of a client, you want to have the best. In front of a potential employer, I mean, there's so many built-in spots where we do compare. So absolutely. This is just kind of, I appreciate you so much that you're pointing this out. I just need to know, why is it so hard to force these new behaviors? Why is that so hard? What was it in our brain? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, it really is within us. And I think you described it as even entrepreneurs, right? In fact, I was talking to someone yesterday about this very idea, and that being, number one, when we were entrepreneurs, we just want to acquiesce that power and say, I'm just leading. I'm just creating the strategy. I don't want to roll up my sleeves. This gentleman I was talking to yesterday and just coaching him, he wants to manage his own time, wants to run his own business, and wants to do everything on his terms. And I said, that's great, right? But what's also true that you need to change as well. As the book says, what got you here won't get you there. We have to build a certain set of resolve and different habits. And guess what? It's easier for us to create than it is for us to correct in certain respects. Because when we're correcting ourselves, we've got a history of who we've become and how we've defined ourselves and the boxes that we've painted and kept us safe for our own survival. When we start challenging that, that's when those oh shit moments come, right? It's like, I didn't sign up for the accountability. I signed up for the commitment, sure, but that's somebody else. I'm going to hold somebody else accountable.
Exactly.
Now you just acquiesce your power. At that point, it's like, well, okay, now it's somebody else's fault.
Yep.
As business owners, let's be real clear. there's only one person who's at fault. Now, you might have acquiesced that power, or you might have delegated, but there's only one head that rolls, and that's because we need to manage and we need to lead. And we're good at what we do. We're good at making those widgets. We're good at being authors. We're good at being technologists. We're not necessarily good at being a leader. We're not necessarily good at being an entrepreneur. Yet, when we hear those words, leader and entrepreneur, we think about we're acquiescing power and like it's somebody else's job. And so if going back and trying to balance those behaviors is so daggone hard, because now I got to course correct everything that I thought I was into somebody who I want to be. And that takes time and habit versus what I write down on a spreadsheet or what I write down on a PowerPoint, because that change goes by way of what I send out tomorrow versus behaviors and habits take consistency and time. And you can never, ever acquiesce that.
So you mentioned, I love the words course correct, because I talk about that all the time, small course corrections. Mm-hmm. In this situation, are they small course corrections? Is that what the expectation is? Because I think when somebody thinks of, any type of behavioral pattern change or something, that it's like a 180. Yeah. And it's like, man, we've been going this way forever. And we talked before the show, I live in Milwaukee, you're in LA. Mm-hmm. I can say that if you're in Milwaukee and you jump on a plane and you want to go to San Diego, you're flying along. And if all of a sudden the, captain says, you know what, tells to the co-pilot, I'm going to do a little 4-degree course correction. Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody's going to notice because I just changed that, right? Well, 4 degrees ends up in LAX, which, LAX is painful any day of the day or night. I don't know where all those people come from. 9 lanes of solid traffic, 24/7, right? But that's a little course correction that can mean such great results at the end. So do you have any tips for us if we, what does a small course correction look like for somebody that's trying to have a behavior, change in their life?
Yeah, it's while it's said in a very simple way, it's extremely hard to do because we have to maintain that conscious level of it. When we think about transforming our lives, we're thinking about a transformation no different than a caterpillar to a butterfly, where that caterpillar starts off and then comes into a chrysalis, and through obviously our process becomes a butterfly, never to be a caterpillar ever again. But across all of those steps, we're making incremental changes. So we're not doing this all at once, right? As we're thinking about our behaviors, as we're thinking about even changes in our own business, there's changes that you can make real time, like, hey, I can change my branding on the website immediately. If my client was overwhelmed, she can immediately start letting go of certain things and now putting things back into her agenda and back into her day-to-day, and where does she want to spend her time? Yeah. That's a lot easier on paper. And as I like to say to my clients before we even get started behaviorally, I said, we all live parallel lives on paper, because what's on paper is the definition of who we are. It's the framework of success, but also the criteria for failure. So to set yourself up and my clients up for success, making incremental changes throughout the week, throughout the day, throughout your routines. It's not all at once. It's taking and looking at your day ahead of time and looking at your week ahead of time and saying, where am I going to make this change? Where am I going to have this different philosophy? Where do I start? It's almost as if, again, as a business owner, like you're going back out there remarketing and rebranding yourself. You can put that out there, but now you're going to have to reintroduce yourself to your clients in a lot different way. What's that new product that's going to be brand new to them that doesn't necessarily fit what I was doing before? No different in that context. That is something that is objective. What's more subjective is your own personal transformation on your behaviors, your own ideologies. But it's also as important of taking that incremental change each week and each moment. It's also, what are you now willing to let go? You can't do everything. Yeah. You can't carry certain things forward. They served a purpose at one point, right? Not to say that they're bad, but where you ultimately want to go, going back to your discovery, you may need to be able to let that go, because if not, you're going to be fighting yourself the entire way.
Sure. Wow. So I mean, and you glossed right by it, and you probably live it every day, but it was like really um, revolutionary to me what you just said. And I wrote down, do something ahead of time. When you're looking at your week, I mean, I'm thinking about, planning, filling up hours, trying to do all that in an average week. Well, you're saying something completely different, like, what are you going to do when this happens? Or,
Yes.
my gosh, how cool is that to be thinking ahead rather than wait till you're in front of your temptation, plan for it ahead of time, I guess, or whatever it is that trying to change. So that's really cool. So for the listeners, what a great thing, what a challenge that is for us the next time you look at your calendar and think about, that from a different perspective. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No, you're welcome. And I know one of my, like I go through it every week with one of my clients now, and we look at his calendar and say, okay, here are the new behaviors. Here's what you said you want to do. Here's your direction. Here's what you said you're willing to do. Here's what you said you won't do. Okay, now that we set the white lines, we know what we're going after. What's in your calendar this week that we can actually start to integrate those behaviors? Let's build off what you did last week. Let's think through what you weren't good at or didn't necessarily do as well. And now how can you start to integrate that? What it affords us a chance to do is also say, we don't need to do this every single moment, because damn it, that's draining too, right? When we got to think about this every single day, and it's like, that just becomes too much, and now we're just drained.
Thank you for that get out of jail free card, Ian, because I was like, man, I can't do my work because I'm too busy here now planning my future.
Exactly. But it's also planning the future, but it's not accounting for every single hour. Sometimes that accounting of that hour could be, I'm going to sit on my hammock on the beach someplace and just relax and just get lost in my thoughts, because that's just as powerful, especially for entrepreneurs who are now thinking strategically, now need to just be able to step away for a moment and really be able to set the tone, both for your business and for yourself, to now just step back and give yourself that breathing room. And I find that it's my clients are more successful, or more specifically, they're able to institute the new behaviors and routines.
Sure.
A lot faster, but also with a lot more intention. And they tend to stick a little bit more.
So if we look at the opposite for a second, and, some people want to just stay where they're at. You mentioned the caterpillar and the butterfly. And if the caterpillar says, you know what, I'm not changing, I'm going to live as a caterpillar. I don't know if he can do that or not, or she can do that or not, but probably not. But, work with me on this. So if there are people listening, I mean, they can just stay where they're at. I mean, this is just basically trying to improve their life and their existence, but there's nothing forcing us to do this, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because there is nothing forcing us to take intentional action and to do something different. We can be very comfortable in the place where we are, for whatever reason. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that you always like it, but you're comfortable. I will say that my book and our conversation is really anchored on the fact of really taking that personal power. When we're empowering ourselves to say, you know what, I know I can do something else. I want to do something else, and let's go. Now, I will say, for those who don't necessarily have that mindset and or just don't want to do that, which is perfectly fine. I've run into a number of people who have that very, very context. I will say you will change irrespective. And the reason I say that, if number one, we all get old. we can't change that, right? That's one guaranteed thing we will all have. So you will change in one way, shape, or form.
Sure.
But I also think about it in the context of our surroundings and our environment, which plays a critical role in what we have to not only manage when we're changing something, but also when it's changing and we have to adapt. Oh yeah, by the way, COVID-19 over the last 2 years, you were forced to do something different. And so this book and this idea of intention of our capabilities, that choice of whether we start or not, we have some level of control over that. But even when we're just standing still, we can't dictate the housing market crash. We can't dictate COVID-19. We can't dictate necessarily getting laid off.
Right.
What we can do is dictate our response. And in that moment of response, of how we react, is where your intention really comes into play. Of now, what do you do?
Right.
Now, what steps do I take? And so while we're putting it in the context of, hey, I started this, I want to go out there and expand and do all this other good stuff. Sometimes it doesn't start with us. Heck, you get divorce papers. Heck, you didn't ask for that, or maybe you did. But the reality is, hey, you've now got to respond, and now you have a choice to make.
Sure.
And so let's go.
So I wrote down these 3 words that I learned as a kid: stop, drop, and roll.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically what they taught you in school when there was a fire: stop, drop, and roll. And again, the words don't matter, but if you wait until you're in a situation before you really have a solid response, I think what you're saying, Ian, is you're going to struggle with it, you know, and it's something's going to happen that's probably not the best. I mean, if you, instead of stop, drop, and roll, we run, whatever the opposite, don't drop and don't roll, I don't know, whatever the opposites are. But, you know, I mean, if that becomes your mode, I think you're going to struggle getting out of that fire. And I think it's just like ready, aim, fire for a gun. If you fire and then you get ready and then you aim, I mean, there's a sequence of events that are there. So, you know, as we start to land the plane today, so discovery was first, plan in place was second. Is there anything else that would come after the plan in place?
Yeah, see, it's you know, just from the flow standpoint, and while I'm going to say it in a flow, it is not necessarily linear because we're all at different places at different times in different situations. Sure. But it does start with the first capability is discovery. The second principle is the capability is the principle of you. So aside from discovery of what it is you want, the principle of you really takes into context of who am I? What characters am I living with? And within myself, like, how did I get here today? Like, they weren't all bad, but are they serving a purpose for me to move forward? Also, the principle you, and I touched on it briefly, is around our environment, because we surround ourselves that keep us insulated to the places where we are, that say, yes, I've got a house. Well, guess what? Does that mean, what kind of risk can I take? Can I just up and move and do certain things? My friends, my family, my routines. We've created relationships that keep us where we are. So I ask my clients and even myself, the principle you, let's take stock in that, because that's going to impact the third piece to which you mentioned is the plan. So you got discovery, you know what you want to do. You've got the principle view of who am I? The third piece is now I can build a plan based off of an authentic story. Not to say we don't have blind spots, not to say that we're perfect, but at least it's coming in there with some level of consciousness that normally we're just jumping to a plan and say, hey, let's go do. The fourth piece is really around building the experience, experiencing it as we talked about just now. It's not changing all at once, but let's take that incremental steps, right? Because we take those incremental steps, we just like a little baby, we start to crawl, then we walk, then we start running. We're just not running all the way, and then guess what? We start falling and tripping and hitting things, and then we're right back where we started. So that fourth piece is experience. And the last piece, the fifth piece, is attunement. It's really paying attention and taking stock on what are you learning. Just like any good entrepreneur, you're paying attention to your customers, you're paying attention to your environment and the changes in the market, you're paying attention to your process and your flow, and then how can you make it more seamless? You're paying attention to your employees, you're paying attention to your leadership. Pay attention to what you are changing and take stock on what did you commit to?
Yeah.
What did you say you're going to do? Did you do it? And how can you now build consistency around that? Not as a force of judgment, but as a force of reference so we can move forward.
So oh my gosh. So there's 5 of them. Can I pick and choose? I want to do the fun ones and let other people do the not so fun ones. So I'm like, I don't like this discovery thing. I'm going to skip this principle of you know what, I'll plan because that sounds like fun, and then I want to experience that, and then this attunement thing I'm going to give to my customer service department, right?
Exactly. Give me that feedback. But you know, it's so funny you say that, because that's ultimately what happens. You know, we jump directly to the plan,
Yep.
We jump immediately to let's go do the heck with experimentation and experience. We're just going to go all out. Right? We're not just going to do incremental. We're just going to do it full throttle. And then we'll learn from it. And just like Wile E. Coyote, we'll probably throw it out, right? Because Wile E. Coyote never used the same two contraptions. He always started from scratch. So guess what we do? We always start from scratch. And guess what? Even if we are successful in that moment, we've created a milestone, an event, but can you replicate it? Have we built it into the fabric of who we are as a business, doing something new consistently so it's scalable? Have we integrated these behaviors into our own lives as an individual? And oftentimes that answer is no, because as we start here for a moment, we always seem to go back because guess what? I can't sustain it. We have a problem with sustainment. And it's because we jump to planning, doing, and then starting over from scratch, from planning and doing and planning and doing. Well, we really haven't solved the real issues. Wow. So if you just invest the time, you're going to be good.
That's awesome. And that's exactly what I was going to say is the original second question is, have you ever taken steps to move forward only to realize you're right back where you started? It's because basically just, I'm going to say we try and short circuit the 5 steps and we only do 2 or 3 or whatever is convenient that day. Right. And then we get mad at whatever. Yeah. Because we're like, man, that didn't work, right. That guy had no clue what he's talking about, and that's where I think it's so helpful to have all 5 of these pieces in place. But again, it takes work, it takes effort. And that's why I think it's, you don't see this transforming the world because like you said, we want to just we want to, my parents said when I was a kid and they said, don't just stand there, do something. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And now as I'm getting older, I'm like, don't just do something, stand there. Yeah. It's kind of flipped around and it's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I'm just like so excited to stand there and just kind of figure this out rather than let's go do something,
and I think COVID really forced people to slow down. And that's where, when I was coaching individuals outside of an organization, but just individually, they were scared because of the noise. And that noise was quiet. Yep. Right. It's like the noise was inside their thoughts. And it's like, oh, what do I do? Because everything else is just a distraction. Yep. But when you can give yourself at least some instance, not all the time, maybe, but some instance of just slowing down, you're going to be in a better position of saying, you know what? I can set myself up for success in a lot better position long-term, right, than if I just jump right in. And so even when I tell my readers and even people who I coach, this book is intended to be experienced. And on that first read, categorically, you can probably read this book in a weekend if you really wanted to, but the book is intended to be experienced. Yep. And then you can go back to it and use it as a reference point. And just say, hey, where am I at? And let me just validate and check myself on my business. Am I really thinking about this right? Am I going about this the right way? Am I considering what decisions I've made? And are my decisions now impacting my ability to do something? And am I willing to do that now? Yeah. And it gives us a frame of reference. And so oftentimes we don't have that reference and we don't take the time to do it. And so really trying to put people in a position of stronger foundation and success long-term.
Well, and you bring up such a great point because I was at a book a month clip for a while, and then I kind of looked back, you look like in your boat, you look back and you see all the kind of mess you just brought up. And I'm like looking back and I'm going, well, what did I learn from that book? Or what did I learn? And I'm like, I couldn't even remember a point from a 200-page business book. Wow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm done, because I feel like I wanted that badge. I wanted the book of the month badge, so that I could kind of walk around and tell everybody I'm doing a book of the month. Right. And just to your point, it's like, if you don't experience it, I mean, I have books that I've read 5, 6, 7 times because I just can't put them down. And then they seem to then start to turn that moth into the butterfly. As we talked about before. So that's really
I get it. Yeah. And I'm a big believer in I don't need to know everything. Quite frankly, that's a lot. And that's
Wait a minute here. Now you're a doctor. Hang on a second now. PhD, come on now. You know everything, okay? Us
Right.
looking at you, you know it all. You got it all put together. Don't tell us otherwise, because now you're going to shatter this for us.
Yeah, that'll shatter the expectations of what it means to have a PhD and a separate master. So it's like, hey.
Oh my gosh! See, there you go. Now you doubly have it all together.
But it's funny. It's to your very acknowledgement statement. It's I take pride in the things that I read and say, you know what, I know what I read, and I'd rather have 2 books that I know are solid and that I can say, yep, those are quality books, than 100 and say, what did I just read? And absolutely. I experienced life that same way. It's like, I don't want you wasting time. I have yet to meet anyone who wants to waste time. Any entrepreneur surely does not want to waste time, because time is money.
Yep.
So do the things that are intentional. You don't need to do everything, and understand that whatever you're doing, put your heart into it, both your energy, but also relaxation too, because that's just as important.
That's awesome. Well, we got 2 more questions for you, and I'm gonna let you go.
Sure. All right.
I want to know Dr. Ian Brooks' tip of the week.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The tip of the week is balance. One of the things as an entrepreneur that I find for myself is it's so easy just to wake up in the morning and just go do. Yeah. Mind is racing, all the things that you didn't do or new ideas, etc. Afford yourself a time to just invest in yourself, taking a walk, going to the gym, having a nice conversation outside of the context of your business.
Sure.
I find that the more I do that, or more I integrate that type of lifestyle into my routines, the better entrepreneur and coach I am. Cool. Because I'm coming with a fresh lens. I don't feel burnt out. And I'm also doing some level of investment with myself as well.
Balance. I think of a balance beam, and I think how hard it is to balance,
Yes. Yeah.
Especially a guy my size trying to balance beam would not be a good YouTube video. But, I mean, when you think about a balance in your life, that's like, now you got family and friends and your faith in yourself and blah, blah, blah. These things just go, and, why do all these other things suffer? And it's so heavy on the work side, or so heavy on the entrepreneur side, and we just keep plucking away at all those other pieces, because they'll always be there, we think. So great tip. Thanks for that. And so now the fun one.
Sometimes they're not. Go ahead. Now the fun one.
Yep. So the fun one here is, what is one thing that most people listening don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Ooh, let's see. One thing that people don't know, that's probably a lot. Let's see. Probably that we'll stick with the theme of educational stuff. So I have my PhD in industrial organization psychology. I have my master's in clinical psychology. I have a bartender certificate. I have a personal training certificate, and I have a customer service certification as well.
Holy cow.
That's probably not something many people would just glean.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the bartender thing, but I think we'll save that for our next time. So that
sounds good.
That's so cool. Well, you know what? I mean, for the people listening, I'm hoping that there's something that you really, it resonated with you today, because it's a situation where you can, stay where you're at. You can continue to struggle with those same habits, or those same thoughts, those same things, behaviors over and over, or you can look at these 5 things. I strongly encourage you to grab a copy of Intention, because it sounds like that's a really great spot to start. So once you do that, and once people do that, or if they want to learn more about you, Ian, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Sure. So they can start off by going to my business website. That is rhodessmith.com. That's RHODESSMITH.com. There they can find more about me, more about my coaching services, both for organizations and individuals. They'll see even a link for my book where you can buy it on Barnes & Noble as well as on Amazon,
Awesome.
both ebook and hard copy. You'll see this podcast as well as others and other thought leadership. You can also email me there. From a social media standpoint, I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. B_intention. And I'm also on Facebook under Dr. Ian Brooks, and as well as on LinkedIn as well.
Wow, that's so cool. Thank you so much for this. I took a ton of notes like I always do. And the problem is now I got to do something with this, you know? You know, I've learned that I just can't do these interviews and just move on about my life. Like, oh my gosh, that was good. Next.
Right.
So I'm looking at this going, all right, oh my gosh, how do I possibly do this? So Thank you so much. I think I saw there was like do you have a Facebook group, or I saw that on your website too, or was I mistaken?
I don't have a Facebook group, but I am on Facebook. I've done Facebook Live as well as LinkedIn Live, so you've probably seen a number of different connections in that respect.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for opening this up for us.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to encourage the people listening, as I do pretty much every week. If this was something that spoke to you, I just encourage you to, take a step of some type to move towards being more intentional in your life. And if you get stuck, that's why Ian's here. That's why, he wrote his book. So grab a copy of that. If you can't afford it, let me know. I'll be more than happy to pay for the book for you. But there's just solid information in there, and 5 things that are there. And my book, when I get it from him, I'm going to just rip out the chapters that I don't want, Ian, and then just use the ones that we talked about that I like. So sorry, I'm telling you up front what I'm going to do to your book, but
that's all right. Hey, this book is good for keeping you warm where you are as well as necessary, but also some good content as well.
Absolutely. That is so cool. Yeah. So thank you again so much for writing the book. Thank you for all you do, and look forward to learning a lot more from you.
Yeah, likewise, Dave. Thank you for having me.